Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So, as of a few days ago, I'm kind of officially working from home now until the foreseeable future. And while the rest of Tokyo is not really on a government-ordained lockdown, it's kind of put a little bit of a thorn in the side of a lot of the ideas that I had for the channel, most of which kind of involved going outside and doing fun things, which seems to be a bit of a commodity nowadays. So as I probably do a little bit too much already, I was perusing the internet the other day, and on Sora News 24 I came across a really interesting article about a 1,000-year-old Japanese dessert called so. And the recipe for said dessert is detailed in a very old book called the Engishiki, which is actually from the Engi period, and details a whole bunch of things like the laws, the customs, and lots of other little details about life in that period of Japanese history. So in the article there was basically a very detailed instruction of how to make the dessert. So since I'm stuck in the house anyway and my cooking skills are passable at best, I thought, why not give it a go? Let's try and make a 1,000-year-old Japanese dessert. And the best part is actually there's only one ingredient, so what could go wrong? So the one ingredient we need for so is milk, but I think I've only got soy milk in the fridge, so I might need to go to the shops first and pick up some real stuff before we give this a go. Right, so we've got our ingredients. We've got our milk, and according to the recipe, the only other thing we need is a frying pan. So we've got a frying pan, 2 litres of milk, and a rubber spatula, just so you know we don't get any sticky bits on the side. But just before we get started, let me check the recipe again. So according to the recipe, we're going to need 1 to of milk, which in today's units is around 18 litres of milk, or 4.8 gallons. That's a bloody lot of milk, isn't it? I don't know about you guys, but that's probably far more so than I can actually manage. That's if I actually manage to make it correctly in the first place. So just like the article, we're going to go with 2 litres of milk over here. That's probably just about as much as I can fit in this pan. And by the time it's all finished, I should have a nice hand-sized bar that I can chomp into. So I guess we just have to boil the milk. That's literally the only step. Boil and stir. So let's get to it. Okay, so the milk's in. It says in the article that it roughly took about an hour to make this, and basically you can't stop stirring for the entire time. So I'm gonna set a timer here just to give me a rough guide, but consider I've never tasted this before, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to be expecting. So it's probably gonna take about 5 minutes for the milk to boil up first. So according to the reporter Ayaka Idate, she tried this dessert once before in a museum, so she had a bit of a fighting chance having known what it actually tasted like. So I'm just going to have to go off her very detailed description to say that it's brown in colour with a crisp powdery texture and flavour like a sweet rich cheese. I mean, it's milk, right? So that's kind of going to give me a cheesy flavour anyway. So I don't know if I should just start stirring. Let's go for it. So it says to use a high heat on the flame, but then obviously to stop it from burning, you just have to keep it stirred constantly. I don't know if I'm supposed to turn it down after it starts boiling though, because it didn't actually mention in the article. So I'm gonna play it by ear here to see if it starts getting a little bit too brown for my liking or a bit too sticky to the sides. We might have to make some mid-flight adjustments. Okay, we're just coming up on the 10-minute mark now, and it's starting to get a little bit foamy. And I'm worried that it's going to start bubbling over the edge of the pan. So maybe I'm going to turn it down a little bit. Keep it warm, but not too hot. There's also starting to get some brown, kind of flaky bits floating in there. It doesn't look burnt, but it's kind of like a very thin film of like cooked milk almost. So far, I think so good. and it's got a bit of a skin on top. But it smells very nice. It smells very sweet. I mean, it just smells like milk, but it's kind of, there's a lot more like, it's a lot sweeter than I thought. So according to the article, it looks very similar to what Ayaka had here in this picture here. So I'm just going to keep going with what I am at the moment. I did turn the heat down a little bit because it was getting a bit crazy, but we're still boiling, it's still bubbling away, and I need to spend not too much time away from the stir. Keep it going, keep it stirring, keep it stirring. So we're coming up to 20 minutes now, but it's not boiling as hard. Maybe I turned it down too much, so I think I'm going to crank up the heat back a little bit. Ah, there we go. So when the heat is a little bit higher, the top layer has started bubbling again. And that might be the secret, you know, getting all that air trapped inside the little particles of milk, and getting that film on top, because that seems to be the part at the moment that's actually solidifying and turning into something that you could actually eat opposed to drink. Okay, so turning up the heat really seems to have been doing the trick. That's probably where I went wrong at the start. I seem to be a little bit behind where the recipe says I should be at the moment. But now that it's boiling at such a high temperature, it basically, as soon as I stop stirring, parts in the edge, they'll just basically start to go solid again. So I can kind of rake it off the sides and do a rotation. And then when I come back around, it's already kind of started to congeal again on the sides. So this probably seems to be a little bit more in line. There's a lot more like curd kind of coming up on the top as well now. So hopefully we're on the right track. So as we come up to the 40-minute mark now, we seem to be doing pretty well in terms of volume. It's definitely going down. But all I can seem to think is, if you were to cook this recipe 1,000 years ago without a gas stove, how many bloody trees would you need to chop down to keep this fire going? Because this is intense. This is an intense heat. And I feel to get the end result, you can't do it with a low amount of flame. You're going to need a big fire. So as well as just taking a lot of time and energy in terms of like physical, you know, motion, stirring, constantly keeping it moving, it also is going to use a lot of energy. So I wonder what my gas bill is going to look like this month. In terms of colour, it's still kind of milk coloured. It's gone a little bit darker, it's a bit more creamy coloured now. So I guess in a way that's good, it means it's not burnt. But in the article it's described as being kind of a brown colour. Or, I mean, actually, I guess if I'm looking at the picture here, the colour looks pretty similar to what I've got. So I guess I'm on the right track. I just feel like I still have way too much liquid. But again, I'm gonna chalk that up to having turned the heat down prematurely after the first initial boil. So I think I'm probably about 10 or 15 minutes behind schedule. So according to Ayaka, at this point in the process, 45 minutes in, tiny bubbles of milk began to leak from the pan and singe her hands. So, I mean, that's not happened to me yet. So I don't know, did she have this even hotter than I've got it at the moment? Okay, so we seem to be reaching a critical point now. It's starting to get real kind of thick. There's lots of bits coming from the bottom. I'm worried. Ow! Fuck! Okay, that's what she was talking about. Tiny bubbles of milk began to leak from the pan and singe her hands. So, I mean, that's not happened to me yet. Ow! Fuck! Okay, so at 55 minutes now, and it's looking good. It's looking very promising. It's almost what I imagine it would look like when you make fudge. I've never made fudge before, but I imagine before it becomes a kind of like a solid, it's like this really thick kind of goopy liquid, and then you have to cool it down. And that's kind of what this is looking like. So I can imagine it's going to have the same kind of texture, possibly. It smells very nice, so it's very, very sweet. So on closer inspection, the picture seems to look actually fairly close to what I've got here. I think in real life it's a little bit darker than the picture is showing, because mine looks more like a dark, kind of like a mocha kind of brown, and hers is more like a golden yellow kind of colour. But it doesn't look, except for there's a few little speckles in here that are burnt, just a few bits like this bit here. It's pretty uniform, it all looks pretty good. So the last step that she mentions is just to basically wrap it in some cling film and just knead it all together into a block and then put it into the fridge to harden. So I guess that's the final step. Yeah, I think there's definitely a better way to knead this, but I don't know what it is, so I'm gonna just wrap it up again and then maybe put a second layer of cling film around it. Okay, so at the moment it looks kind of like an oatmeal breakfast bar, but let's knead it first, see what we end up with. Okay, so bar's done. Let's just go and pop him in the fridge. Let him harden up overnight, and I'll see you tomorrow. Right, we have our delicious plate of so. First smell test. It smells pretty good. It smells very milky. As you'd expect, it's the only bloody ingredient in the thing. But it looks weird. I can't believe this came out of 2 litres of milk. But it looks like the photos that I saw. It doesn't smell horrible and it doesn't appear to be burnt. So I've kind of surprised myself. I really thought I would bugger this up. I've cut it into slices. I'm not really sure how you're supposed to eat this, but I assume, just making it into small enough chunks that you can actually put it in your mouth makes sense. And I don't know if you're supposed to use chopsticks or you're supposed to use your hands, but the chopsticks are all the way over there and that's just too much hassle. So I'm just going to get stuck in with my hands, really. So this is so. Oh wow, okay, that is very dry. Wow, that is very, very dry. It tastes like, I don't know, I don't want to be too harsh, I don't want to say it tastes like chalk, but it's not great. It's not terrible though. I feel like it's one of those things that, like a lot of especially Japanese confectionery, like traditional Japanese sweets, I'm not really a big fan of, things like mochi. So I feel like it's not kind of like an acquired taste, but perhaps a Japanese person would prefer this to me. Let's try it one more time. It's just so dry. Okay, so I don't think that was the best thing that I've ever tried in my life, but I will say that it's definitely not the worst by any stretch of the imagination. Just the biggest downside to that whole experience was just how dry this thing is. It's like putting a handful of crackers in your mouth without a glass of water, and all the moisture in your mouth is just completely sucked out, and that makes it difficult to taste it. But kind of after that initial experience and the dryness goes away, you can kind of taste that milky flavour. It's actually quite nice. So would I recommend so? I mean, for all the effort that you have to go through to make it, I could probably think of better uses for 2 litres of milk. But if you're really, really curious, then I'm sure there's definitely people out there who would enjoy this thing. But if there's any way to make it more moist, I'd certainly suggest figuring out a way to do so. But if you do want to make it for yourself, then I'll leave a link for the recipe down in the video description. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video more than I enjoyed this. So if you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Kantan Japan for future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next video.